Vaudeville is a fascinating word. It comes from a French word for a tradition of comedy shows that prominently featured popular music. Its etymology is debatable and convoluted, but what this word retained from its French origins when it moved to the United States was a connotation of light, happy entertainment for the common people. It became a family-oriented variety show format filled with pretty much any kind of act that would grab an audience's attention for a few minutes, from dance routines to comedy routines, magic acts to animal acts, and various strange and astonishing stunts. In the 1890s, vaudeville blew up. It would come to dominate the American entertainment landscape through the 1920s. Its big stars were all compelling performers, whether they had tremendous talent, novel gimmicks, or just a lot of charm, charisma, and personality. Yet it is in this context, the vaudeville theater circuit, that the earliest American animated films were first shown to the public, almost as if the cartoons were performances. Perhaps they were, and perhaps they are. I mean, they're certainly presentations designed to elicit emotions from an audience, but this raises a tricky question. If a cartoon short is a performance, who's doing the performing? Is it the cartoon characters themselves? They certainly think so. They know they work in the movie business, and they know they're playing to an audience.
I'll leave it up to you intelligent people in this audience whether I deserve the Oscar or not.
Or is it the animators who are performing? They certainly think so. All the expressions of thought and feeling that get an audience invested in the characters come from their drawings. Of course, the process that turns these expressions into a performance involves factors that are typically out of their hands. The drawings will have to be inked and painted, the cells will have to be photographed, the film will have to be projected, and the audience will have to show up before these characters can get a laugh or a tear out of anybody. Even still, I view the animators as actors, and the performances they gave in the cartoons of the 1940s and 50s, through the likes of Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny, are some of my very favorite performances of all time. Yet, just as vaudeville stars had to change how they performed when they started working in the motion picture business, animators likewise had to spend the early sound era unlearning their communication through standardized theatrical stock expressions and learn an approach to acting that was more personal. Over the course of the 1930s, the American animation industry would embark on a mission, led by the Disney studio, to make cartoon characters more real to audiences than anyone would have thought possible just a few years before. By the decade's end, the medium unlocked new abilities. When the characters are thinking, we follow them. When the characters are crying, we feel for them. And when the characters tell us they're performing for us, we believe them. In this new season of Stick to Shorts, I'll tell the story, or at least I'll tell a questionably summarized version of the story, of how Hollywood's animators learned to make you believe that a kind of personhood could come from the pencil. Hello, all you happy people. Welcome to Stick to Shorts Season 2, Building Character. This is a podcast about classical, theatrical, animated shorts. These are the cartoons that played in movie theaters in the days of classical Hollywood, and I'm on a mission to learn all about them. My name is JD Hansel, and I'm so glad you're here. Previously on Stick to Shorts, we looked at classic cartoons at a glance, but spent a little extra time with the late 30s and early 40s. That's when there was a change in attitude in animation coming from the Warner studio. Naturally, I was starting the story in the middle. It's what you do. Now it's time to go back in time to see how they got there. Our story will start with the origin of animated cartoons and conclude in 1940 with the cartoon that is considered the official debut of a certain wild hare. I'm not going to make you wait until the end of the season, though, before we start talking about him. There's too much to say. He was peculiarly absent from our first season. Some might say a glaring hole, others might say a rabbit hole. Hopefully season 1 felt like one long drum roll to the rabbit's arrival, but just in case, here's a shorter drum roll. He's the star of the Warner Brothers cartoons, one of the funniest characters of all time, and the definitive classic cartoon star, Bugs Bunny.
What's up, Dad? Of course you know this means war. Whaling season. Gruesome, isn't it? Ain't I a stinker? What's up, Doc?
Basically, you can think of this season as a salute to all animation up to about 1940, but mostly Bugs Bunny. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I'm balancing these two different objectives, but I can't do it alone. Well, I don't want to do it alone. I want to hear someone making active listening sounds like, sure, sounds fascinating. Joining me for this really necessary trip through Toontown is a return guest, my first co-conspirator for this project. It's my old buddy Anthony Strand. Hi, Anthony.
Thank you, JD. I'm very excited to be here.
So, here's what was going through my head as I planned this season. I believe that Bugs Bunny is the definitive classic cartoon star. I also believe that Mickey Mouse is the definitive classic cartoon star. The difference is that Mickey is the biggest star to come out of cartoons, while Bugs is quite specifically a cartoon star. You know what I mean?
I agree, and I think that his catalog of the classic Bugs Bunny shorts looms much larger in his public image than the classic Mickey Mouse cartoons do. I think Steamboat Willie does, maybe.
Yeah.
And like Fantasia.
Right.
Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Yeah.
But I think you think of Bugs, it's different for different people, but you're going to think about Baseball Bugs. You're going to think about What's Opera Doc, right?
The Hunting Trilogy, Rabbit of Seville.
Huge.
Like, it's still a few central cartoons, but, like, it's a bunch of them. And pretty much whatever you see in later Bugs Bunny media is going to be riffing on those ideas. Like, if your familiarity with Looney Tunes somehow came from Looney Tunes Back in Action, then that's still really about the dynamics established in the cartoon we're talking about today and established in the Hunting Trilogy before. And sort of
all of those were several years before this.
Yeah, I was thinking about it for a second. Like, was one later? No, they were all done by this point.
This is 57. Yeah,
this is 57, and those were in the early 50s.
Right.
This is all to say, I've always found Mickey and Bugs a fascinating pair to compare. Mickey is more iconic, but Bugs seems to be far more popular among animation fans and professionals. Frankly, he's funnier, and if you listen to our first season, you know part of the reason why. The Warner Brothers cartoons were trying to be much wilder and funnier than Disney. The other part of it is the difference between what cartoons could do in 1928, when Mickey arrived on the scene, and what they could do in 1940, when Bugs emerged. It wasn't just a difference in sentiment, although the public's tastes were certainly shifting during wartime. It was also a difference in the kinds of performances cartoons could give. That's because of the development of something called character animation. Character animation, sometimes called personality animation, is the practice of acting through a cartoon character, particularly by conveying thoughts, feelings, and a specific personality through movement. The emphasis is on the way they move. That's really what I'm trying to learn about this season, and approaching it in terms of going from Mickey to Bugs is just a really useful through line for that. Those are sort of the tent poles holding this up. Obviously, there will be a whole lot of other different things in the middle. Along the way, I should say, we'll have a few flash forwards to later cartoons. It's not all 20s and 30s cartoons after this one, don't worry. That's for when I want to zoom in on a particular topic that helps with our understanding of the history and practices of animation. It also gives me an excuse to cover more Bugs cartoons, with today's cartoon being one of his all-time greats.
As long as you brought it up, can I say that I think it's funny that for your introductory Bugs cartoon, you chose Show Biz Bugs, which is essentially a Daffy cartoon disguised as a Bugs cartoon.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes, it is, isn't it? It's almost like I'm up to something.
Love it.
What's interesting to me about this cartoon is that both parts of its title, Showbiz and Bugs, are worth calling into question, with the Bugs part being quite funny.
It feels like it's salt in Daffy's wound, that not only in the cartoon is Bugs the star, like this is a Daffy Duck cartoon. He's on screen almost every second, and yet it is called Showbiz Bugs.
Yep, it has to be billed as a Bugs Bunny cartoon, even though Bugs does very little of note. Like, he's doing things. Bugs is impressive. He's doing lots of things. But yeah, it's a Daffy cartoon, and yet they have to kind of put Bugs' name in the title, put Bugs on the poster. The cartoon is so much about itself in a way that I think is really interesting, and understands Bugs as someone who's just going to have to show up and win no matter what, and it almost doesn't even matter what he does. So yes, I've started this season by kind of putting Bugs in a corner, and he's going to have to prove himself over the course of the season next to both the charm of Mickey and the hilarity of Daffy. Does that make sense?
Sure. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Now, what about the showbiz part of the title? It seems pretty self-explanatory, right? Until you think about it. This cartoon is from 1957, and they're not doing a television show. They're not making a movie. They're not in some sort of like Broadway show or a typical musical theater of the time, a narrative-driven thing like a Rodgers and Hammerstein kind of thing. They're not in an opera either. What's going on here? Well, they're doing a variety show. It's not exactly a vaudeville show that would have lots of other performers doing some of these acts, but vaudeville is what the cartoon harkens back to. There may have been some other form of popular theater at the time that this was referring to that I just don't know about, but even if so, whatever that would be would have to be based on vaudeville. Now, it might not seem obvious to start going through the history of classic cartoons by talking about a medium that was, for the most part, not cartoons. But surprising as it may be, vaudeville really is where it all began. It established an entertainment distribution system through its vaudeville circuits, which were networks of theaters that moved talent from city to city all across the country, and from what I can tell, this kind of formed the basis for our modern entertainment industry. In fact, it was a vaudeville circuit that funded Paul Terry's early animated shorts, which were a huge influence on Walt Disney. I guess that's to be expected since vaudeville is where many of the first works of animation were first presented. The cartoons functioned as acts that gave a show more variety. This vaudevillian approach to entertainment, providing a varied package of different kinds of entertainment in one evening, made it only natural that films would be presented in much the same way, with lots of different offerings. This made room for cartoons on the program at the cinema. Animation's pioneers were influenced pretty directly by vaudeville's approach to performance of both comedy and music. The ways in which the first cartoon characters conveyed emotions was largely an imitation of the way they did it in vaudeville, and even in the last years of Hollywood's golden age, cartoons were still taking pages from it. I would go so far as to say this: the role that classic cartoons have played in our culture has been, to a large degree, preserving some snapshot of what vaudeville was, keeping its comic sensibilities alive today.
Hey, Pinhead, do you know how to make antifreeze?
Yeah, hide a nightgown. Yeah.
So, with that in mind, we're going to spend a good chunk of this episode just trying to mentally place ourselves in the world of vaudeville. What it was like, what preceded it that shaped it, and what it led to. If you're not interested in that and you'd like to skip ahead to the cartoon talk, check the description for a nifty timestamp. Still here? Great! Let's begin. I guess the way that I would sum up the whole vaudeville experience as I understand it is just to say that The Muppet Show was a vaudeville show. I mean, The Muppet Show was also based on British Music Hall, which is closely related, but still, if you picture the Muppet Theater, but the cast is humans and they're all doing their acts in their suits with their little hats and their canes, just add a singer with a ukulele, have the audience throw tomatoes at the comedian, have the hook grab them and pull them off stage, and that's how I like to think of vaudeville. How about you, Anthony?
I'm no expert on vaudeville, really. Obviously,
sure.
The problem with any stage-based performing art is that we can't truly see it.
Right.
You know, like, I know vaudeville from, like, the Marx Brothers movies.
Yep.
You know, some of their vaudeville routines got into their Broadway shows, some of which became their movies, right?
Right.
Or something like that.
And that's a huge part of how we know what vaudeville is, because it was so early that by and large, it was just not recorded, or at the very least, the sound component couldn't be recorded, and sound was a very big part of it.
And actually, that reminds me of one thing I did want to talk about in terms of preservation of vaudeville. One of my favorite podcasts is The Good Old Days of Radio show, hosted by John Tefteller.
Yeah, you've talked about this.
He's a collector of old records, and he has a lot of original transcription discs of old radio shows.
Oh, great.
Things like that he owns, that he has saved. But he, on his podcast, just features best possible recordings of Golden Age radio shows.
Yeah.
And for his 300th episode, he did a show called Tribute to Vaudeville, which is an episode of The Big Show. This was NBC's attempt in the early 50s to win back the audience that was leaving radio to go to TV.
Oh, interesting.
Big,
okay.
Splashy 90-minute variety show hosted by stage legend Tallulah Bankhead.
Okay.
And this particular episode is called their Salute to Vaudeville. And what that means is in 1951, they got a number of old vaudeville entertainers who were elderly then to do their old routines on this radio show.
Wow.
Yeah. And that includes Smith and Dale, who were the inspiration for Lewis and Clark in Neil Simon's The Sunshine Boys.
Okay.
Which, do you know the play or the movie?
No, I do not.
Okay, so The Sunshine Boys is a play and then a movie about an old vaudeville team reuniting for a network television special in the 70s. Played in the movie by Walter Matthau and George Burns.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and they're terrific. I mean, Matthau was like 53 and Burns was 75 or whatever, but they seemed the same. I think Burns was 80. Okay. But anyways, they're based on this team, Smith and Dale, who do this famous doctor sketch, which they did on this episode of The Big Show. They do their doctor sketch.
How much does the doctor charge for a visit?
Oh, he charges $5 for the first visit.
Yeah.
$3 for the second, and $1 for the third.
$1 for the third visit?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, here comes the doctor now.
This must be Hobby Lobby. Well, doctor, here I am again.
Yeah, what? I never saw you before.
I'm here for the 5th time. If I come here once more, you'll owe me 8 cents. So you're a doctor?
I'm a doctor.
I'm dubious.
I'm pleased to meet you, Mr. Dubious. I'm awful glad to know you.
I'm still dubious.
Are you married, Mr. Dubious?
Yes or no?
What do you mean, yes or no?
I am, but I wish I wasn't.
And they do this stuff so excitedly, with such relish. There's another act called Baron Munchausen and Charlie, which is, of course, Baron Munchausen. We're going to get into this. It's like an immigrant dialect routine bit, right? Mm-hmm. And
I'm taking your word for that because I actually only know it in terms of the German film The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, right, and its later loose remake.
Right, so this is just a comedian doing a German dialect using that name.
Oh, okay.
No relation to the actual story. It's just a German dialect comedian.
Of course. Okay.
But he says, in the old country, I worked on a farm. I was a pilot. And the straight man says, a pilot? What does a pilot do on a farm? Oh, sure. My boss told me pilot over here, pilot over there.
Okay. Yeah.
And see, the difference between you and me, JD, is that I find this stuff delightful.
Oh no, I don't dislike it. I just don't. I don't know. In that case, I didn't quite know what to make of it. But
because he was telling him to pilot. Okay. Anyways,
I follow the joke, and it is funny. It is funny. It is good.
I know.
It is good.
But what I was gonna say though is, so things like that, which obviously like that is a radio show from almost 75 years ago, and that's like a medium that is now obscure.
Yeah.
Like it's not like they're like rerunning that outside of like niche podcasts,
Right.
And that's like the best audio recording we have of some of these real teams,
right.
who are doing acts from 1910 or whatever.
Like it is a totally lost art form in a way. I mean, it has a relationship to burlesque, like a very close relationship to burlesque, where those were both forms of variety theater happening in the States at the same time.
Right.
Burlesque certainly kind of came first and really shaped what vaudeville was, but burlesque was doing an adult-oriented version of things, whereas vaudeville was much more family-friendly.
Right. Well, and I mentioned the Marx Brothers were a vaudeville act, of course, famously. Abbott and Costello, who are much as Bugs replaced Mickey Mouse. Abbott and Costello replaced the Marx Brothers in the hearts of America as the 30s turned into the 40s, right?
Okay, yeah.
And they were a burlesque team. Abbott and Costello never worked in vaudeville.
Oh, okay, interesting.
They were burlesque comedians. That's how they got their start.
And yet it's all in the same like variety tradition?
Right. So like you watch their movies, you don't notice or think about it.
Right. No, you would certainly when you watch their movies where those are going to be made during the code.
Yeah.
It's all going to be basically vaudeville shtick.
Correct.
And so we have all of these remnants of something that used to happen that revolved around wordplay in a time when it was not easy for that to be very well recorded or preserved in like film or whatever. And so we get all these films later where the movie stars have sort of people who came from the vaudeville and burlesque variety circuits kind of had to move into movies in order to survive. And so we kind of get to experience things like Who's on First that give us a very clear picture of the kind of routines that people were watching in the vaudeville theater. So wordplay was a very big part of it. Like when we think of the wordplay, the dialogue related humor of, Bugs Bunny switching the words on Daffy so that Daffy is asking to be shot, that kind of wordplay goes back to vaudeville. That was sort of the audio side of things. The visual side of things, slapstick. The violence in these cartoons, I think, in terms of why that was so popular, can largely be attributed to the fact that in the vaudeville days, so much of the comedy there was people hitting each other. And it was specifically a lot of comedy around, like, people playing immigrant families where the characters, like the different members of the family, would whack each other and stuff.
Right.
But then that evolves into physical comedy performances of all sorts. And like the Three Stooges and stuff is, again, sort of building on acts that were developed in the days of variety theater. Basically, animation historians who have analyzed the comic sensibilities of something like Tom and Jerry or the explosions that you see in the Warner Brothers cartoons, any of that sort of thing. Part of why that was popular and accessible to an audience then was people who were watching these cartoons probably grew up seeing people do that on stage in vaudeville. And that's a lot more intimate. That's like, and real. Like, that's a real person hitting someone else for laughs. I mean, it's presumably faked. But nevertheless, once you've seen that, then to go to more extreme violence from someone who's not there in the room with you and is in fact a drawing, and is also a cartoon animal, like, that's just so many degrees removed.
Right.
That a lot of this probably, that now we kind of look at it and go, oh, some of this is a little bit painful to watch. Certainly with the Tom and Jerry stuff, as you've noted, like, that can be,
yeah.
You can just kind of look at that, as I have done sometimes, and go, oh, ow, no.
Yeah.
And
Whereas, and as I've said, like, I don't know why Tom, like, getting his tail whacked with a cleaver, it makes me cringe. But Daffy getting his beak, like, when in this cartoon, when the xylophone explodes and Daffy's beak falls a beat later, I laugh every time.
Yeah, it's really freaking
and I've
funny.
Seen this so many
it's
times.
Really freaking funny. It's so good every time. But in both cases, we're dealing with directors with an incredible sense of timing, which we'll get to.
Right.
But like, you never hear Daffy scream anywhere in this. He doesn't really make a sound when he gets hurt. He's just insulted when he gets hurt in the worst ways.
Daffy makes sounds when he's excited, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's a good point.
And I mean, what's his signature sound is the woohoo woohoo thing from the early days.
And yet when he's harmed, then everything gets really internal, and, you know, he like composes himself once he has been physically destroyed. And never composes himself a moment sooner.
Right, and then he says something withering. Like, he's not, it's not like an instant reaction, like you said, right? It's thanks for the sour persimmons, cousin.
Yep. And then the other thing you're going to see in cartoons that's carried over from vaudeville is a reliance on stock characters and stock expressions, any kind of performance that signifies a type of person or an emotion that everyone in the theater could identify in an instant. Unfortunately, this came with a heavy reliance on stereotypes, especially racial and ethnic stereotypes. Many of these were played by immigrants to the United States who might have been playing a stereotypical version of their own people. Other times might have been playing someone else's. The effect was a kind of melting pot that was technically inclusive in a way, just in a very warped way, that was also very othering and reinforced cultural hierarchies. At its worst, this took the form of blackface minstrelsy, which carried over from minstrel shows, which was sadly a very big part of vaudeville. So, just to briefly put that in more historical context, I say briefly, I don't know how long this is going to take. I'm so sorry, Anthony. Thank you for bearing with me.
JD, I love this podcast. Like, I love to hear you talk about this stuff.
Thank you. But what I have never done on this podcast so far is say, so you know how this is a cartoons podcast? We'll table that. I need to talk about the worst theater tradition in American history for a bit, and then the theater tradition that comes after that, to then make sense of why we're talking about cartoons, as though people don't instantly understand these cartoons anyway without that context. Like, this is the easiest stuff to understand without context. People have been doing it for generations, and yet me, being the person I am, I'm like, well, you know, there's actually a lot that comes before this that contextualizes why we're, you know.
Why does Mario wear white gloves?
Hey everybody, JD from the future here. I decided to re-record this section so I could write out my thoughts and be a little bit clearer and hopefully more listenable. Please feel free to skip ahead a few minutes if you're not feeling up for a heavy and upsetting minstrel show info dump. I should acknowledge that I, as someone who is not a scholar and not black, am not the ideal source for information on this topic. Please take everything that follows with all of the grains of salt. I initially got my information from a college textbook on the history of American music, but I eventually figured out that that information was mostly wrong, so I bailed and went to Wikipedia since it had better citations citations. That's not something I like to do for this podcast, but it felt appropriate for a part of the episode that's more or less an aside to give context. At some point, I'll read a book on it when I have the stamina for a deep dive into a super depressing subject, and then I can make corrections if I need to. But for now, grains of salt. I just know that I didn't learn about this at all until I happened to take a music history class in college, so in case there are any listeners who never got any education about minstrelsy, I feel obligated to at least bring it to your attention. You should be aware. I certainly don't want to avoid the subject where I think it's relevant to our larger conversation, just because I find it uncomfortable. Its relevance to this conversation boils down to 3 points. The first is that it established a comedic tradition around racial stereotyping that continued into the 20th century and into some of Hollywood's animated shorts. The second is that its aesthetics certainly had an influence on cartoon characters like Mickey and Bosco, though how much influence varies from character to character and is highly debatable. The third is that it formed the infrastructure for the pop music industry, a role that it would pass on to vaudeville, which vaudeville would pass on to radio and cinema. The business of selling sheet music by putting the compositions in popular media gave rise to the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies shorts. Minstrel shows were a form of variety entertainment starting in the early 19th century, made up of blackface performances. They were America's first original theater tradition, and from what I can tell, they were easily America's favorite form of entertainment for a very, very long time. They centered around stereotypes of black slaves and other people of African descent, often using recurring character types like the Mammy and the Dandy, and recurring stock characters such as Tambo, Bones, and Jim Crow. I should stress that Jim Crow, the fictional minstrel show character, was not named after Jim Crow laws, but rather Jim Crow laws were named after the fictional minstrel show character. The ultimate cultural function of the minstrel show proved to be reinforcing a myth of black inferiority, which would be reflected in U.S. law. Everything is bad. While minstrel shows were met with some opposition in their time, notably from famed abolitionist Frederick Douglass, they remained ubiquitous through the 19th century and across the United States and Canada. Their popularity was significantly diminished by the Civil War and emancipation, but to a degree they carried on by just evolving into vaudeville. It was minstrelsy that established a format for American entertainment in which a charming host performs a monologue and then presents other performers doing comedy acts and musical numbers. Now, that probably sounds unspecific. It sounds like variety shows in general, and late night shows and morning shows and radio shows and all kinds of things. But that's partly due to the fact that the minstrel show is at least a little bit responsible for all kinds of things. It's the grandfather of all that stuff, and vaudeville is the father. Everything is bad. Certain minstrel show characters, the interlocutors and the dandies, dressed in exaggerated versions of upper-class attire, top hats, sometimes monocles, and certainly white gloves. Of course, they were only wearing the white gloves in reference to other people who wore white gloves at a time when that was not very strange. According to Disney historian Jim Korkis in The Book of Mouse, Mickey's gloves were specifically meant to look like the gloves that children commonly wore at the time, in keeping with the studio's initial idea that Mickey was just a boy. Even if he and Minnie were performing adult behaviors like driving a car, they were still understood as children, which is why they were designed with shoes and clothes that were too big for them. As you may know, the reason most often cited for Mickey's gloves is that animators needed to distinguish his hands from his body. If he moved his bare hand in front of his body, it would disappear. Certainly the same positive effects that the gloves would have could be achieved with a white outline, but I don't know how easy or hard that would have been for animators at the time. Given that Mickey didn't have the gloves in his first appearances, I don't get the impression he was originally designed to resemble a minstrel, at least not in that way. We know that the Disney studio kept changing his design to make it more expressive, so it makes sense that the gloves would have come about to make it easier to draw him in many more poses. This explanation seems plausible to me, but nevertheless, the consequence of this design choice was tying Mickey, Minnie, and all other characters who borrowed the design trope from them, Goofy, Bugs Bunny, Woody Woodpecker, etc., to a really harmful tradition. There are scholars who specialize in minstrelsy who say that Mickey simply is a minstrel. I am not in a position to argue with them. I'm sure they have a lot of context that I lack. I'm not trying to be an arbiter of what is or is not offensive, but I have tried to provide what context I can. Anyway, as I mentioned before, minstrel shows formed the basis for the popular music business because they provided a national circuit in which musical compositions could be circulated. Most of our popular songs from the 1800s were initially distributed this way, including Camptown Races, Oh Susanna, Turkey in the Straw, Shoo Fly Don't Bother Me, and Jingle Bells. This ensured that minstrelsy got its fingers in an astonishing amount of our current popular culture, and even more so, the culture of the time period this podcast is about. Its aesthetics and cliches carried over into the films of old Hollywood, just as many racial and ethnic stereotypes did by way of vaudeville, which was populated with immigrants playing other immigrants of different ethnicities. Over time, TV and film, including cartoons, would move away from such humor, especially after the Civil Rights Movement. We now know from the Lady of the House documentary on the Tom and Jerry Golden Era Anthology Blu-ray that Chuck Jones, when he eventually was given the reins to the Tom and Jerry series, was insistent that the cartoons would no longer peddle the black maid stereotype. However, the documentary also highlights that the character Jones is referring to, who would come to be known as Mammy Two Shoes, was brought to life by very impressive performances from black actress Lillian Randolph. While it would be nice to see what an actress of her caliber might have done with characters that were not rooted in such stereotypes, her legacy should not be forgotten. Note: the fact that stereotypical black characters were often played by black actors, going all the way back to minstrel shows, does not make those performances or stereotypes okay. Not that those black actors should be given a hard time for doing what they had to do to survive, but my point is, it's understandable to me that this may have created, at least from what I can tell, an illusion of consent at a time when it was ubiquitous and when the information infrastructure was not designed to bring marginalized perspectives to everyone's attention. In fact, by and large, it still isn't designed to bring marginalized perspectives to everyone's attention, so who knows how much I'll discover about how badly I may have botched this section of the episode. It still felt worth the risk to make sure we were all going into this project with some understanding of what we're looking at when we watch these cartoons and where this stuff comes from. That's all I have to say about that for now, but please remember that I am not a school, I am not a historian, I am not a library. Please go to your local library. American history is so bad.
It's true. It's true.
America stinks to talk about. If you talk about it honestly.
But I think this is people like you and me who love old entertainment. Mm-hmm. This is just something we have to reckon with all the time.
Yeah.
You know, a few years ago, I watched 76 movies from the year 1933.
Yes.
During the year 2023.
And I commend you.
Thank you. But a couple of those movies were movies starring Wheeler and Woolsey, a team who came out of vaudeville, like a two-man comedy team. Mm-hmm. And I watched two of their movies that year. So This Is Africa.
Oh, dear.
And Diplomaniacs. Now, both of those have, you might guess, a lot of racially insensitive material.
Yeah.
Diplomaniacs, JD, the ending joke of this movie, which is just like a zany, madcap, anything for a laugh comedy. Mm-hmm. Plot doesn't matter. Ends with a bomb going off in the United Nations that turns all of its United Nations, what do you call them?
Representatives.
They're now all in blackface, and then they do a song in blackface. And that's the end.
Yeah.
And that's 1933. So you watch pre-code movies even into like the mid-30s. Mm-hmm. It's like you say, it's constant.
Yeah.
And I feel like once the war started, it's a lot less.
Okay, that's interesting.
Once we have black soldiers in the United States Army out in Europe and Asia, fighting for the U.S. Army in World War II, you get a lot less racially insensitive material.
That is, I'm going to consider that, and I'm going to look into that some more, because that's a really interesting idea. In a way, that sounds right, but also in World War II, that's when you get the cartoon short, not even a full cartoon really, but the cartoon Any Bonds Today, which is all about raising money for World War II, and It has Bugs Bunny doing a number in blackface that is very much an homage to, Al
Jolson,
for the most part, when we see,
specifically,
for the most part, when we see cartoons doing this kind of thing, it is in reference to Al Jolson, to the film The Jazz Singer, who was doing a minstrel number in that film, and that film is like canonically the first sound cartoon,
first sound feature.
Excuse me. Yes, sound feature film, not a cartoon. Thank you, Anthony. Yeah,
like I own a book called The Warner Brothers Story, which is a big oversized hardcover. It's from late 70s, early 80s. And Al Jolson in blackface is right on the front of that thing.
Really?
Yes. It's a bunch of it's a collage of heads. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Humphrey Bogart is there. James Cagney is there.
Right.
But Al Jolson is in blackface. It's not like it's just because Al Jolson in The Jazz Singer plays a guy who wears blackface sometimes.
Right.
You know?
And yet, like, it was those specific numbers in the movie where everyone, you know, according to legend, that's where everyone was like, oh my gosh. Well, also, I don't think that the entire film... Okay, confession, I have never watched The Jazz Singer, but if memory serves from what I know of it, are there not moments when it's not a musical number, when it does not have sound?
Correct. It is a silent film with sound sequences.
Right. And so I think part of it is that those sound sequences that really made an impact on people are, generally speaking, the ones where he is going to be doing the minstrelsy bits.
Yeah. And like, obviously, again, disclaimer, you and I are not the two to like hash this out.
Absolutely not. Obviously. Absolutely not. When vaudeville emerges, it's kind of this interesting combination of theater traditions coming over from France that had that name vaudeville for sort of a different kind of comedy theater, British music hall that was just emerging coming over to the States, burlesque coming to the States, the theater traditions of all different immigrant communities from everywhere. You get the Yiddish comedy influence and the minstrel show all get kind of mixed together into one soup that becomes this variety show that's going to be a bit of comedy, a bit of music, a whole bunch of different things, novelty acts, people who like eat musical instruments or whatever, or who pull pieces of furniture out of their jacket somehow. It's just whatever seems like an interesting thing, all kinds of nonsense, all kinds of bits. But there was always going to be traces of the minstrel show in it. And also there were going to be songs in it so that song publishers could get their songs around the country using the vaudeville circuit. Not only did vaudeville in its popularity serve as a good distribution system for songs, it was also a good distribution system for early films. If you had, like, in the early silent era of the movies, if you had a little short, then vaudeville theaters were initially the place to play it, the way to get it around. And what you'll see in the earliest years of film is that most of those early shorts are not narratives. Like, eventually you get to what could be considered the narrative era of film, but initially it's what film historian Tom Gunning called the cinema of attractions, which is to say that these films were just novelty attractions where it's like, here's a little film of a strong man.
Yeah.
You know, like, here's a boxing kangaroo. It's that kind of thing where they're just presenting you with some act, with some image of something strange and interesting. And then it moved on to the next part of the vaudeville show. The whole appeal of vaudeville was, here's one thing, then it's a different thing, then it's a different thing. If you don't like this, just wait a few minutes, and then it's going to be something completely different. This model of, like, a package approach to entertainment, where here's a whole bunch of different things, when you think about it, that's what entertainment used to be. It was variety shows. You'd read the newspaper, where you've got news, you've got the funnies, you've got, like, a bunch of different things that all come together in one package. Now we consume things a bit more as individual things. But I think today you could still look at something like streaming services, the subscription model, and see we're not buying that usually just for one movie or one show. We buy into the opportunity to explore a whole variety of things. And that's good to know, because as cinema started taking over, as you start to get, like, dedicated movie theaters, which were a bit cheaper to do, not having to pay all these performers, just take one performance that's already been captured and run that, they're going to be about, here's our program of a whole bunch of different films that you're going to get to see if you come in today. And as that evolves, once you get to the point where it's, okay, it's not just a bunch of shorts, it's a feature film, nevertheless, they have this variety package model where you're getting a feature film, and you're getting a newsreel, and you're probably getting a second feature film, and you're getting a cartoon. All of this made sense at the time because of vaudeville. Of course, so sound basically kills vaudeville. It absorbs some of the vaudevillians. Radio absorbs some of the vaudevillians. That's such an oversimplification, I know. But it is kind of true that, like, once people can go see a sound movie, then they're getting the experience that they want for that time. And it's still a varied thing that has a bunch of different things for you to see. And now, movies are going to have to be relied upon to keep the music industry alive. If you've got a library of songs and you want to get those around the country, you got to get them in your movie musicals. People aren't going to see vaudeville shows. The vaudeville theaters are shutting down or converting to cinemas. Now you got to get it into your movies.
The same is true of radio, where I think you know this, but not only variety shows, Sitcoms often have an act break with the singer on staff singing a song.
I didn't know that. See, you know radio history really well, and I do not.
It'll be like George Burns and Gracie Allen, or George Burns like joke sang, right? He's well known for not being a good singer,
right?
But they would have like, here's the first part of the show. Now it's the Maxwell House coffee commercial, and now here's whoever our singer is this week performing Yellow Rose of Texas or whatever.
Yeah,
and then back to the story. Like that's very common in not just their show, a lot of radio sitcoms. So radio's
I had
doing
no
that
idea,
same thing.
Anthony.
It's and a lot of times it'll be like, here's this #1 hit by Bing Crosby performed by whoever we have on our show. You know what I mean? Like they're not playing a recording.
Right.
It's just this is the hit popularized. They might even say popularized by Bing Crosby or something.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and it is true at that time, so much of the appeal of radio is they weren't playing records yet.
Right.
Like that was such a long ways away in a way, right? Like that becomes a thing in the 50s where you get the disc jockeys trying to.
Well, I mean, you have 78s
78s
before that, but they're.
I'm not saying records didn't exist. I'm saying
you're saying on the radio, right?
On the radio, the practice was like the appeal is here is live theater in a way that it's being performed live right now somewhere in the world, but not where you are because you get to be at home.
Yeah,
you don't have to leave. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to be with other people. Like with vaudeville, the appeal was you were with a lot of very different people in these cities where all of these different immigrants had come. And it is like this cosmopolitan experience of community where so many different people are represented and misrepresented in the theater with you, in the audience and on stage. Again, there was segregation complicating that, so many different factors there. But nevertheless, I think to a point, the appeal of vaudeville is you're with a lot of interesting people. And with radio, it's kind of one of the first times, I think, where you see, oh, well, now the appeal of entertainment is you don't really have to go anywhere. You can be at home and you can still have, you can have someone like Glenn Miller playing in your house, basically, and it's still a live performance somewhere out there.
Right.
So as this is happening, Warner Brothers has collected for itself a pretty sizable song library and has people writing songs to go into their musicals in this early sound era where musicals were in. And it is in that moment that, with the appearance of Steamboat Willie, with the immense popularity of Mickey Mouse, and soon thereafter the Silly Symphony series, everyone decides, oh, we need to get into the cartoon. Like, all the movie studios are like, oh, darn, we actually have to get into the cartoon game now. We have to take cartoons halfway seriously, try a little harder with these. Because they had been super disposable on the program. Like, easily you can imagine them going away, if not for Disney's success at the beginning of the sound era. And who was right there kind of on the ground floor as this was happening but Friz Freleng, who is the director of today's cartoon, Show Biz Bugs. Warner Brothers had a need, or really saw the utility of cartoons being, here's a vehicle for musicals, like short musicals that will feature the songs that we have in our library so that people will go out and buy the sheet music and will go out and buy the records and all that good stuff. And that's why they're Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, why they're both musical titles. That's largely because of Silly Symphonies, but also because they were focused on music, because that was sort of the product being sold in those very early years, like 1930. Certainly in the Merry Melodies specifically. And so that's what Friz Freleng is coming up in. Friz Freleng, as we talked about in the last episode, started in Kansas City, where so many of the early great animators started. Moved to the Disney studio, bounced around a lot before ending up with Hugh Harman and Rudolph Ising, working with him to produce the first Looney Tunes for Leon Schlesinger for Warner Brothers. Way too many names, way too many entities. I know, it's sort of a complicated story, but we went over most of it last time so that you'd be good to go for this season. And so with Disney, he's really getting his first train as someone who didn't have any training in art before just kind of jumping into cartoons at Kansas City Film Ad Company. He is getting his training with these people in almost immediately how to make sound cartoons. Whereas pretty much everyone before him, your Paul Terrys and stuff, they were going to be starting with silent cartoons and then figuring out how to catch up. he's learning sound from the beginning, pretty much, or very nearly. Of course, he starts on like some silent Oswald cartoons and stuff. We'll get into that. He doesn't start on the Oswald. We'll get into that. What he lacks in art training, he does have some musical knowledge from the beginning, and so he relies on his sense of rhythm to become one of the great cartoon directors over the course of the 1930s, directing a lot of those early Merry Melodies cartoons and helping to establish the studio as, well, just helping to establish the cartoon studio there, basically, right. and its whole thing. His whole thing basically is this musical sense of timing. Like when people praise Friz Freleng, there are lots of things to praise, from what, his pairing of Sylvester and Tweety, his creation of Sylvester in the first place, if I'm not mistaken, creating Yosemite Sam, and then of course later the Pink Panther stuff as well. Like there's a lot to be said for all of the great things that come with Friz Freleng and how well he handled Bugs and Daffy and all of these characters. But a lot of times it just comes down to, by gosh, did he have a good sense of timing that was so locked into, like, inseparable from the fact that music was a big part of the way that he made cartoons almost from the beginning. Before even storyboarding the cartoons, he would time everything with a bar sheet. He's basically taking a piece of sheet music and using that to write out exactly when each of the gags happens. He figures out rhythmically everything that's going to happen in the cartoon before anything's been drawn. What in the world, Anthony? How do you do that?
I couldn't.
And that is where like my mind is just kind of blown by Friz, but it also explains why everything in the cartoon we're about to talk about works. I want to ask you, Anthony, do you have a favorite Friz Freleng cartoon?
So I thought about it for a long time, and I cannot get it down to one.
That's okay. Can you tell me about a good handful of cartoons that in this moment stand out to you as great Friz Freleng cartoons?
Yeah, so previously when I've been on the show, we've talked about a couple of them, which is...
That's true.
Yankee Doodle Daffy.
Yep,
and,
great.
And Three Little Bops.
Yeah.
So I'll set those aside, although those certainly are two of my favorites.
Absolutely, yeah, they're great.
Back Alley Uproar, I think, is... Like, you talk about the musical timing thing.
Yeah.
Which is Sylvester singing on a fence to annoy Elmer.
Yes, Elmer it's one of those, a cartoon character is trying to sleep and the universe will not let him. It's one of those cartoons.
And every gag is so perfectly timed.
That whole cartoon lives or dies by its timing, and boy does it live.
That's the thing, yeah. So that's definitely one. You mentioned that I'm not a big Tom and Jerry fan, so I'm gonna feel like I'm
it's okay.
thumbing my nose
it's
at you
okay.
by saying a cat and mouse cartoon, which is Canned Feud, which I think is a masterpiece.
Interesting. Now, Anthony.
Yes, sir.
A few months ago, when we first started talking about this, I told you that the primary DVD set that I grew up with, I didn't really grow up with a lot of Looney Tunes on VHS, the Looney Tunes Spotlight Collection, the first volume, which is just discs 3 and 4 of the first volume of the Looney Tunes Golden Collection.
Sure, and Canned Feud is on there?
Canned Feud is on there, and you were kind of surprised, like, oh, okay, Canned Feud, interesting. And I kind of took that as you kind of saying, really? That being pushed as, like, one of their greats?
No, I do love it. But also, I've watched it with my kids a few times since then.
Oh, okay.
Too, and that's one that, like, and maybe it's like some of these others I've thought about it more, and I hadn't thought about this one as much. So, like, watching it more recently, the great timing is jumping out at me. You know? But so that's definitely one I've enjoyed a lot lately. But then I got two more, which are, I think, his
you're
two best,
good. This is great.
His two masterpieces that I haven't said. Baseball Bugs, I think, is one of the most perfect cartoons ever made.
Yeah. I was watching it again earlier today, and I'm like, by gosh, this is a good time.
You're out!
Where do you get that malarkey? I'm safe.
I said you're out!
I'm safe.
You're out!
Safe.
Out!
Safe.
Out!
Safe.
Out!
Safe.
Out! Safe!
Out.
Safe!
Out.
Safe!
Out.
I say you're safe! If you don't like it, you can go to the showers.
Okay then, Doc. Have it your way. I'm safe.
It's incredible. I mean, first base Bugs Bunny, second base Bugs Bunny, third base Bugs Bunny. You want to talk about timing? That sequence where it's just bugs at every position, like that shouldn't work because it's the same thing 9 times, and it does because just the poses are so great. And then high diving hair.
His Bugs usually looks really good too. We should say
it does.
That as well.
Yeah, he's kind of his Bugs is kind of the platonic ideal of Bugs for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like a pretty nice average. I mean, his Bugs is slimmer. You could make the case that a Friz Freleng Bugs Bunny tends to physically resemble Friz Freleng, and a Chuck Jones Bugs Bunny is a little bit closer to the shape of Chuck Jones in terms of their heads and stuff. One could make that argument, but I don't know if that's totally true. In any case, they have different Bugs Bunnies, but I accept and enjoy both of those, whereas sometimes I will find a Clampett Bugs a bit much, and almost invariably
Clampett's trying to make Bugs look real ugly most of the time.
I don't know what he's doing with Bugs. But and then there's McKimson. And this is not going to be the Everybody Craps on McKimson podcast, but it sure is tempting to be that podcast because his Bugs does not look good.
I don't understand the half-closed eyelids on everyone. It's not just Bugs. Robert McKimson cartoons, everyone's eyes are half closed all the time, and I don't get it as a stylistic choice. I never have.
No,
even like when I was too young to register that's what it was. You know, I was always just like, why are they doing this?
For me, it wasn't even the eyes. It was just generally speaking, overall, I just find the drawings unpleasant to look at. I find the faces unpleasant to look at. And generally, there's a huge generalization. There are good McKimson
he made some great
cartoons.
cartoons.
He did.
He directed some great cartoons.
Yeah, he did.
I got it. I shouldn't say favorite, but it's up there. It's definitely like, no question, top 5 Bugs Bunny cartoon for me. Probably my favorite Bugs Bunny cartoon on most days. Mm-hmm. Although rabbit seasoning is awfully good.
It's really good.
No, but high diving hair.
High diving hair.
Which is, I think, are you not a fan? You kind of rolled your eyes a little bit.
Oh, I didn't mean to roll my eyes. I was thinking, like, we talked about this when we talked about One Froggy Evening, and I'm trying to remember, did all of that get cut out of the episode because it was at the very beginning, and I believe it all got cut out.
Okay.
So this is all new to the podcast, I think.
So then I will go ahead and say that I've always preferred Sam to Elmer in general.
A lot of people do, I think.
I think he's just a more dynamic personality. You know, I think that's part of why I, like, as a teenager, when I was getting into this stuff, why I gravitated towards Friz as, like, the quote-unquote underdog compared to Chuck or whatever, was I was like, he directed every Yosemite Sam cartoon. This man is a legend. You know?
Okay, fair enough.
But I think High Diving Hair is the best one because it's just like Sam goes to see Fearless Freep do a high dive, and Fearless Freep's not there. But Sam paid his money to see a high dive, and that is the whole issue. It's not like he's a criminal or a bank robber in this one. You know, they're not like in opposing armies like they sometimes are.
Right.
He's just a man who paid his money to watch someone high dive into a bucket of water, and he needs it. And it's such a funny premise, and the jokes, the individual jokes in that thing, which of course includes, you know, the thing where eventually we just see Sam falling and then climbing back up. Right. And we don't know what Bugs is doing, but we can fill it in.
Which, once again, rests on the timing. Mm-hmm. But also, it's one of the great examples of how these directors, at their best, had a really good sense of when does the audience get the idea and now need you to start subverting it, twisting it, like shortening it somehow. When do you have to say, all right, you get the gist, let's move along here, and make the summarizing or the referencing of what you already have seen to death in cartoons or have seen a bunch in the specific cartoon, the joke itself.
Yeah, right, and that's a perfect example.
I will say you definitely like that cartoon a lot more than I do, but I'm going to revisit it at some point.
I like that cartoon probably a lot more than most people do, and a lot more than I like most things.
Yeah, so, I can tell, and I love that for you.
You know,
but it is very popular. Everybody loves that, right? Hasn't Jerry Beck cited that as one of his favorite Bugs Bunnies?
Yeah,
I think.
I believe so. And then I lied. I'm going to say one more, which is
fine.
My favorite Warner Brothers World War II cartoon, Daffy the Commando.
Yes, I had this one on earlier too. It's so good. I've been debating whether or not I'd try to squeeze it into the podcast pretty early, just because I think it was the first clip from anything I played on the show was the clip from Daffy the Commando.
Oh yeah.
When he at the end spoilers bonks Adolf Hitler on the head.
Right.
It's such a good example of a very wacky version of Daffy working. Working tremendously well. Correct. In part because his foes represent order and represent everything that you want to see destroyed and disrupted by some really wacky guy.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, I think all the characters in that one are funny.
I agree. The German, I guess, colonel, general.
Something like that. The German authority figure.
The German authority figure is so ridiculous in a way that, like, when I was a kid, I think I felt like it was a reference to Hogan's Heroes, a show that aired 25 years later,
right.
You know? So, like, it obviously isn't, but it's that same, like, boy, Nazis are ridiculous, you know, kind of attitude.
Right.
You dumb cop, flutes.
In an earlier episode, you and Ryan mentioned my fondness for Fibber McGee and Molly. And
yes,
Daffy the Commando has a joke where the German authority figure picks up the phone, starts making a call, hears that it's the operator, and says, "Oh, is that you, Mert? How's every little thing, Mert?" Well, that's a Fibber McGee and Molly reference.
That's another one of those cartoons where, because it was on the public domain tapes and stuff,
that's where I saw it.
It was very much around, and so everyone got into continuing our conversation, I guess, about pop culture references and how they show up, and how we learned them first in cartoons without really learning them because we didn't understand them.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
That public domain cartoon really got that one reference to. It's Flibber McGee and Molly. Is that right?
Fibber
like McGee. I always get that
liar.
wrong.
Fibber like he's lying.
Oh, I see. This tells you how little I know about classic radio and how much I need to learn it in order to understand anything going on in these classic cartoons.
Right, because they were obsessed with it. Yeah.
They're wild about just repeating radio lines. It's so much of these cartoons, and yet, as kids, we still enjoyed them thoroughly. My favorite Friz Freleng cartoon is probably... It has to be Bugs and Thugs. For whatever reason, I just have a dear fondness for Bugs and Thugs, which is the cartoon in which Rocky and Muggsy are robbing a bank, and Bugs ends up in their getaway car.
Stop right there, Rabbit. How much do you know? Who, me? Oh, I know lots of things. 2 and 2 is 4. Carson City is the capital of Nevada. George Washington was the first president. Got it. This guy knows too much, Muggsy.
Bugs and Thugs is one of those standouts where it just pops out in the Bugs Bunny filmography because that final sequence is so tremendous. And I don't know when I'm going to get to talk about that on this podcast because of my goals for what I want to do with the next several episodes, but it's good. And it shows that a Friz Freleng Bugs Bunny, for as much as Tex gets credit and Chuck gets credit, mostly Chuck gets credit, a Friz Bugs Bunny is a good time.
100%. Yeah.
And is also a very grounded Bugs Bunny. Because Chuck was always trying to give him like an advanced vocabulary, and it was Friz who's like, no, this is a working class New Yorker. He talks about D's and does, not these and those.
Yeah.
That was always kind of what Friz would say. And so you get two slightly different versions of Bugs, both visually and in terms of how he's played, and yet in my mind it all fits together as one as one character, as one bunny, as one guy who feels like a part of my family who I love very much.
Agreed. And I have similar thoughts about Daffy, who perhaps changed more than Bugs did. But...
Yes. So we'll get into that right now, actually. This week's trip through Toontown takes us to 1957. The studio is Warner Brothers, the director is Friz Freleng, and the cartoon is Show Biz Bugs.
Try not to trip me up with those big feet, please. I'll try, Daffy. We're on!
In this cartoon, Daffy Duck is starring in a variety show, or so he thinks. He soon finds out that Bugs Bunny is headlining the show and is getting all of his applause. Will Daffy earn the audience's adoration? Well, watch the cartoon. If you have not watched this cartoon, you should do yourself a favor and watch this cartoon. It's very good.
It's really good.
It's really, really good. Story by Warren Foster. Animation by Jerry Chinicki, Art Davis, Virgil Ross. Layouts by Holly Pratt. Backgrounds by Boris Gorlick. I think that's right. Film editor Treg Brown. We mentioned him before. Voice characterizations by Mel Blanc. Musical direction by Milt Franklin. This cartoon is featured in the book The 100 Greatest Looney Tunes Cartoons, and it certainly deserves to be there. It's one that has been difficult to research, not because nobody has said anything about it, but because I have heard so many people say things about it in so many different Looney Tunes documentaries that every time I'm like, oh, I think it's this documentary where I had this one quote that I wanted to bring up, and then I look it up and like skim through to where I see Show Biz Bugs on the screen, hear them talk about it, and it's not the clip I thought of. It's someone else with a different note to add to how interesting Show Biz Bugs is as an example of any number of different topics of the use of music, of Daffy, of Bugs, of Friz. It's such an encapsulation in a way of what we think of when we think of Looney Tunes cartoons. I think we'll get into the big reason why that is at the end of the show. But in a way, it kind of captures the Bugs and Daffy relationship, the way that we think of it now, which did not exist until the 1950s. Like, these characters were both stars of cartoons for such a long time. And then in real life, like, while Daffy continues to make all of these really freaking great cartoons, Bugs' star just rises and rises and rises. And it gets to the point that, like, the studio has to keep making Bugs Bunny cartoons when you get the sense that maybe they're a little tired of Bugs and how he always has to win by this point in the 50s. And it seems to me, and it seems to other people I heard in some documentary or some bonus feature, I can't figure out where now, I've lost track, that's probably what they were feeling. Like, what this cartoon depicts is probably what people at the Warner Brothers cartoon studio were going through, of like, we have this versatile character in Daffy Duck who can do so many different kinds of comedy. And yet Bugs, no matter what he does, is going to be the one that audiences adore. So let's go through what happens in the cartoon. We begin outside a theater on a city street where a taxi cab pulls up and Daffy steps out with an old-fashioned vaudevillian hat, a cane, and some sort of like sleeves over his feet that look old-timey, but I'm not sure what to call them. From the first shot, we're definitely in the 1950s. Like, the way light, color, and shapes are used here is stunning. It's a very 50s cartoon in terms of design. You know I love that. But also, we're seeing signs of sort of an old-fashioned approach to theater.
How much, my good man?
One block, 25 cents.
25 cents? It's robbery, but I'll pay it. But you get no gratuity. It's enough that you've had the honor of having a celebrity like me in your hack. Daffy Duck, star of this show. See?
I love the joke where Daffy has taken the cab one block.
It's so good. It's so hip. I suspect that he did that so he could step out of a car at the theater entrance. Like, he did not want to walk to the theater. That would have hurt his pride. I'm torn about how to read this then, because, like, that's $2.86 in today's money, if you do the math there, what he paid for the one block ride. And it's like, well, it would be about that much if you took the New York City subway for one block, but it would also be about that much if you took the New York City subway all across New York City. So right. I don't really use cabs. And so I don't know how to gauge what kind of money that is for just one block. But nevertheless, I think that we see him being vain, and not just that, but we see him using his vanity as an excuse to not tip a worker. And that kind of sets him up as fate's target for cartoon torment. Like, everything that is coming to him now feels a bit more deserved than it does in something like Duck Amuck, where he does nothing wrong.
No, he sure doesn't.
And yet everything bad happens to him. Like, here you at least see him doing something kind of wrong, even if I can't tell how much he just got ripped off. In any case, Daffy says, "Daffy Duck, star of this show, see?" And he points to the signage above the theater entrance, assuming he had top billing without even looking, and instead sees Bugs Bunny's name in big letters, followed by "and Daffy Duck" in smaller letters. We hear the cab drive away. The "and" credit would later come to be a credit that has some weight to it, right? Like, eventually, if you see an "and" in the movie credits, then it's like, oh, this is the Glenn Close part or whatever.
Right, for sure.
Whereas here, very much you can tell it means that, like, Daffy is an extra, which is what Daffy has become here, that he was not at the start of this decade, but now people want to see Daffy in a Bugs Bunny cartoon. So Daffy, of course, exclaims, "What? That rabbit's name over mine? I'm the star! I'll just see about this." This is where you can really hear that Daffy's voice is artificially pitched up. Like, Mel's natural Daffy voice sounds a lot like his Sylvester. It's almost identical.
Sylvester. It's the same voice, yeah.
And it's only when they chipmunk it a little bit that it sounds like Daffy.
That rabbit's name over mine? I'm the star. I'll just see about this.
that rabbit's name over mine? I'm the star. I'll just see about this.
But if they take the chipmunking too far, then it doesn't sound like Daffy. From the manager's office, we hear, "But Daffy, we bill according to drawing power." Daffy says, "Oh yeah? That rabbit couldn't draw flies if he was covered with syrup."
Great.
The choice to not say covered with honey, but to specifically say syrup, so that Daffy can do his Daffyism at the end. 5 out of 5 stars. Perfect. Like, Warren Foster, bless you.
For sure.
Daffy enters a hallway with one dressing room on either side. On the left, Bugs Bunny's name has been nicely painted on the door, and there's a star under his name. On the right, a cheap temporary sign has been hung up that says Daffy Duck. No star. Daffy turns up his nose at Bugs' door and enters his own. He immediately comes back out. "There can only be one explanation for white tile in a dressing room," he says, as he turns around the sign on his door to reveal a men's room sign. "And that's it," he says. Fade out.
I love him.
Fade in! The band is playing a super high-energy version of "I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover" as the curtain rises on Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny still backstage. "I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover" is a 1927 song with music by Harry M. Woods and lyrics by Mort Dixon. It was quickly recorded by numerous artists and saw a resurgence in 1948 when singer and bandleader Art Mooney took it to number 1 on the Billboard chart. There's a little piece on it in a Billboard magazine from 1948, a little piece called Clover Square, New York, January 24th. In a heroic effort to finish off a tune in one sweep, Al Jazzbo Collins, Salt Lake City disc jockey, staged radio's first filibuster last week, but the wake boomeranged into a clam bake for the hapless Collins, and chaos resulted. It all started when Collins received a letter asking him to play Art Mooney's commercial-type hit waxing of "I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover." With tongue-in-cheek, Jazzbo, whose nickname is a clear indication of his musical tastes, decided to devote his entire 2-hour show to the MGM platter in gleeful anticipation that his hip fans would howl in protest. However, Jazzbo completely overlooked the luck of the Irish, and for 120 minutes, Mooney played on while phone calls poured in from pleased listeners who added insult to Collins' injury by praising him for playing something good for a change. Events finally reached a frantic climax when a desperate Jazzbo began to pipe his caller's delighted screams over the air, and the local police joined in the fun. The next day, Happy Music stores reported that record sales on Clover, that's the song "I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover," had skyrocketed overnight. Jazzbo's only comment was a glum, "I never knew they were so square."
Great.
So that's why this song was known to audiences and pops up in a bunch of Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Wonderful.
Daffy says to Bugs, "Try not to trip me over with those big feet." Bugs says, "I'll try, Daffy." Bugs is very polite in this cartoon the whole time. Bugs just does his job. He's very nice to Daffy. At no point in this cartoon does Bugs raise his eyebrows at us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, all right, here I go. I'm gonna pull one over on him now. Like, it's none of that at all. Bugs is just, "I'm a professional. I'm doing my job. Daffy, you're doing great."
We're on!
They go out on stage and do a soft shoe dance number to the song "Tea for Two."
They sure do.
We pull back to see the stage from the audience's perspective. Some of the audience is visible to us, and it's clearly a still image. The audience is not really a character in this cartoon yet. We're not really thinking about them at all. We haven't even heard them applaud. They were silent when Bugs and Daffy came out. They're just an image that we get a glimpse of as we watch this show. And there are a few implications to this, I think. So for one thing, the fact that they don't applaud when Bugs and Daffy come on stage means that this audience is not interested in merely applauding either character because they recognize them. They will applaud based on the performance alone, which makes everything that's about to happen all that much more interesting. Secondly, it's fascinating to me that we, the audience of this cartoon, do not identify with the audience of the show, or at least we're not meant to. When Bugs and Daffy perform, we see them looking down at their audience much more than we see them making eye contact with us. It's not like we're positioned, looking up from the audience's point of view. We're watching them perform for a different audience in their universe entirely. And so it feels like we're not being treated as part of the audience. We're spared from the critical look at the audience here, where the audience is kind of the antagonist of the cartoon, I would say. And in a way, we're through through the layouts, the character placement of characters' eyes, the framing of all of this, basically, the cartoon is not necessarily outwardly saying, you are the audience that is the antagonist. It doesn't quite put us in that position. And yet, in a way, the cartoon is an expression of frustration with real audiences, I think. That's how I read it.
Sure, yeah.
Can you tell me about who animated this dance sequence?
Sure, I sure can. So the dancing is animated by Jerry Chinicki.
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch Friz Freleng cartoons, there's a lot of dancing in them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his specialty. If you watch audio commentaries and
you mean that not just that was Friz's specialty, but that was
Jerry Chinicki's specialty. He was the dance guy for Friz Freleng.
Yep.
And if you watch behind the scenes documentaries and audio commentaries, you'll hear this over and over. Mm-hmm. Dance animation by Jerry Chinicki.
Yep.
And so I don't even know if you know this about me, JD, but I have cerebral palsy.
I don't think I knew that at all.
Okay. And my flip answer, when people ask like how it affects me or whatever, my flip answer is always, well, I can't tap dance. And the reason that it is because I always wanted to tap dance like Daffy Duck in this cartoon, animated by Jerry Chinicki. Because it's perfect. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Just this like little soft shoe with his arms going back and forth,
Yeah. All the dancing here looks great.
It looks so good. And especially the sequence in the middle where Daffy's doing his solo, like just getting faster and faster.
Yeah.
And it still somehow is so smooth.
Yes. It's all really beautiful.
Yeah. So that was his specialty. I can't remember. There's a Yosemite Sam too, where Bugs tricks him into tap dancing. And that's Jerry Chinicki doing that animation too. And
I could not tell you which cartoon that is.
I can't remember. I meant to look it up and I didn't get to it.
Listeners, put it in
let us
comments.
Know.
Throw it some. I mean, I have not mentioned that we tend to talk about these episodes in the Tough Pigs Discord server, since that is a Muppet Fan Discord server and not directly related to this podcast. But that's where we tend to have a lot of chatter about it. But also,
we do have a pretty enthusiastic audience over there. I mean, we get a lot of conversation going.
Yeah. So Bugs and Daffy do this identical dance together.
Yeah.
After Bugs and Daffy walk off stage, their number is applauded, prompting Daffy to say, "Boy, listen to that. They love me." Like, he almost sounds kind of surprised by it. And Daffy runs out on stage, smugly takes a bow. The applause promptly stops. His eyes pop open, and he slowly rises from his bow, struggling to process what just happened to him. He angrily storms off stage. His face and movement as he rises from the bow, that, for me, is probably the funniest moment in the cartoon. I think that's where I reliably laugh every time, is when his face just changes a little bit, and he's like, oh. that's what gets me.
It's great.
So then Bugs innocently pops his head out to look at the audience, and the audience just erupts. And so Bugs just graciously bows. Daffy runs back on stage saying, "I'm sick of people taking bows for my talent. Now do your own dance. I challenge you. Dance if you're not a coward."
It's so funny.
It's like, as though someone flips a switch, you hear the audience suddenly start to applaud for Bugs to dance, and then just as quickly stop so that he can dance. So they can just give him his full attention for his little dance. Bugs stomps around briefly to shave and a haircut.
2 bits.
And is joyously applauded. Daffy responds with one of his catchphrases, "Hardy har har." I think of that as a Daffy Duck catchphrase.
Oh, sure.
He must have said it elsewhere. Yeah. Like, it's what you always want from Daffy.
If they like that mess, they're starving for some real hoofing. I'll kill them.
That phrase, "I'll kill him," like, we take it for granted now, the idea of killing the audience, but that's a vaudeville thing. Like, the way that vaudevillians started talking about their audience was as their antagonist, in a way, and they would start using expressions like, "that act killed him," or "that act knocked him dead," like that sort of violent language for an enthusiastic audience that is very happy. That comes from vaudeville. And also the sort of acts that we're seeing, where some people come out and do a dance, is the sort of thing that you would see in a vaudeville show, as are many of these acts.
Music, maestro, please. E flat from the top.
The orchestra plays Jeepers Creepers, and Daffy performs an impossibly fast, perfectly synchronized tap dance that only gets faster, smiling all the way.
That's the one. Ah! I love it so much.
Wonderful. It's so my sense of humor is so attached to disconnect between different parts of the body, particularly a face that is in one mode and a body that is just having a completely different experience. And so this moment of Daffy
looking straight forward
just has a completely blank smile on his face as his body is just is so funny. For a big finish.
I love him so much, JD. He's my special boy.
No, I know. Well, this is why I made sure to get you on a Daffy cartoon early. Mm-hmm. For a big finish, he slides downstage, now disheveled from how hard he danced, only to be met with literal crickets chirping. Daffy turns from smiles to disappointment to bitter resentment. He mutters, "Ingrates," and storms off.
Great.
I think his panting really sells it, the way you see his body breathe.
He's working so hard. He wants it so bad.
He's working so hard for nothing. In the audio commentary track, Greg Ford says that the writer of this cartoon, Warren Foster, previously did the Crickets gag in What's Up Doc from 1950, which is much more explicitly about vaudeville than this one. Like, it's Bugs Bunny's rise to fame through vaudeville, which I justifiably could have put in this season, and for whatever reason...
you didn't want to talk about Robert McKimson. That's the reason.
I guess that's the reason. So that one might actually be the first Looney Tunes cartoon to use the Crickets gag, but it had been around in radio for quite some time. Dissolve to a sign advertising Daffy Duck and his trained pigeons. Daffy has caged pigeons on a table where he sets up a series of small obstacles for the pigeons to do tricks.
The time that it takes Daffy to set up his series of small obstacles for the pigeons is like, because you know what's going to happen. If you've never seen the cartoon before, you know, my son Miles, he might have seen this before, but we watched it the other day. And as soon as he puts up the first one, Miles said, "They're gonna fly away."
Yeah.
He's 7, you know?
Right. Yeah. But also, here's the thing. Good. Like, I like that. I like that you know what's going to happen, and it doesn't matter. Now you just have to watch him do the thing.
Exactly. That makes it funnier.
Which applies to the Pink Panther cartoons that Friz did a few years later. Not even that many years later, where you often can kind of tell what's going to happen. It's fairly predictable, and yet... because you're going to see it done in a very funny, rhythmic way with exaggerated expressions as someone gets very upset, you're like, yes, good, do it, perform the ritual.
Right. Well, and even the xylophone gag is that.
So yes, he does indeed open the cage. Pigeons fly out of what appears to be an open door to outside in the balcony.
That's true.
Daffy nervously smiles at us. And then dances off stage.
And then dances out.
And it's, again, that's where the whole thing is like a few more frames or a few fewer frames on the smile. And that moment is half as effective, if that. Daffy pokes his head out and a tomato hits his face. Perfect button. The second time in this podcast so far that we have seen Daffy get hit in the face with a tomato. And so this was an animal act, which again... another common thing in vaudeville shows. When we think of vaudeville now, I think we think of the comedians come out on stage with their striped shirts and their very flat hats, and they do a little say so-and-so and their little routine, and then the hooks come out and pull them off stage if they're bad. And that is vaudeville comedy, to be sure. But vaudeville was also animal acts and magic acts, like we're about to see. With when it was an animal act, nobody wanted to follow those because audiences found them, of course, very cute and adorable, and then they had to watch a bunch of humans, and it was often not good for the humans who had to try to follow that act. Bugs is performing in a turban, with music to match it, and says, "I place a volunteer in this box and proceed to saw him in half." And that pronunciation, saw him in half, I think is good, because it is vague whether he's saying him or... M as in like apostrophe at like them, because normally I would expect it to be the lovely assistant, a woman, in this role, but it is left pretty open, suggesting maybe Bugs knows exactly what trap he's setting for Daffy here. I think it's very possible. Daffy says, "Don't tell me you've got the gall to pull that old sawing in half routine," which is Daffy calling Bugs on his tricks, basically, which happens in the hunting cartoons as well. Like, I think the hunting cartoons really established this idea that Daffy, having been the Bugs Bunny in a number of cartoons, knows how all the tricksters' tricks work.
Sure.
And expects everyone else to just like rise to the level and not fall for Bugs Bunny-ish crap that everyone should know how to do because Daffy knows how to do it. And yet somehow here, Daffy is the one who completely falls for the trick.
This whole thing is a fake. The way it's done is very simple. Fake feet out one end, and I'm all scrunched up in this end. The oldest trick in the book. It's turban as a fake, too. Just a hotel towel.
Your voice was dubbed.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't applaud him. Look, I'm not cut in half. Stop applauding. It's a fake.
The top half of his body separates from the bottom half.
And it looks great.
It does. It looks weirdly kind of satisfying. He observes this bouncing with curiosity, like not immediate outrage, not in pain, just, oh. Then holds on to his bottom half and says, it's a good thing I've got Blue Cross. And that's the scene. You see how happy Daffy is to have a choice of insurance there, to have a choice to go with the health insurance company that meets his needs rather than getting care from a system that meets all needs. The people don't want to be safe and well. They want to get goods and services from the brands they like, from the brands that Daffy Duck likes. This is freedom. I hate that I'm here. Off stage, Daffy hears Bugs announce, and following my song, I'll play the xylophone.
Xylophone? I can get rid of the rabbit and it'll look like an accident.
It'll look like an accident when it's a xylophone?
It'll look like an accident if the xylophone explodes.
Well, we knew this was going to happen when he brought out the xylophone. There's always a risk. I hope he has Blue Cross, because there's always a risk with those xylophones. Dissolved to Daffy under the xylophone, wiring up some TNT, saying, when he strikes this note, instead of a xylophone, he'll be playing a harp. And does this incredible evil laugh. I can't imitate it. I'm going to try to anyway. It's like a... It's that kind of thing, only it's so much better. It's Mel Blanc perfection. So it's murder, right? Like this cartoon quickly escalated to intent to kill 100% unambiguously. He consults the sheet music for endearing young charms before sneaking back under the table. The composition of the song Believe Me, If All Those Endearing Young Charms is credited to Irish poet Thomas Moore, whose version of the song was published in 1808, but the melody goes back to at least the 1700s, if not the 1600s. The melody later became the anthem of Harvard University's 200th anniversary in 1838, and later still became the instrumental introduction to the hit song Come On Eileen by Dexy's Midnight Runners.
And Mia Farrow sang it on the Muppets Valentine Show.
Oh,
with Rufus the dog.
I think they covered this on some episode of Muppeturgy, but what would it be? I can't remember. Yeah. Didn't even think. The Muppets Valentine
Show, yeah.
Yeah. Bugs announces that he's going to play those endearing young charms.
That's wrong, you dumb bunny! Try it again!
The desperation in his voice it's perfection. This, like, Mel Blanc's craft just didn't get worse. Like, he'd been doing this for 20 years, and his Daffy only sounds better and has funnier line delivery than it was at the start.
I regret to inform you that his craft did get worse, just not yet.
Yes, afterwards, of course it did. Yeah. But by this point, 20 years of him, like, really refining it and just getting really good.
Oh, yeah, no, he's incredible here. Yeah.
The music stand, like, flies out into the crowd here. We get, like, a dark smoke cloud filling the frame, and as it clears, we see a stage with streaks of black and Daffy, wide-eyed, with most of his feathers blown off. His bill falls down, only holding onto his face by his cheeks like they're hinges.
The bill hanging from his face.
And, and then some of the remaining planks fall to the floor and play a few notes to button up the scene. The visual is... I've had that visual on the Stick to Shorts website, I think, since the beginning of the site.
Yeah, that's been your header, yeah.
Because it's this moment where a gag, something that is a punchline, is also a gorgeous work of design. Mm-hmm. And you could just have that frame on your wall, and it would function both as art and also a slot machine for pure joy and giddiness.
Yeah.
Even though it is someone in pain, as much of his body has been destroyed.
Daffy's beak coming off and being otherwise mutilated is, of course, a very strong theme in the Hunting trilogy.
Yeah.
Happens all the time. It gets blown around the back of his head. It gets twisted into a baguette shape. It gets just like falls off into his hand or whatever.
Right. I don't know if that was a thing before those cartoons.
No, I don't think it was. That's what I was going to say.
So I don't know that we mentioned this explicitly, but this cartoon is one of the one of the best examples, I think, of where Friz is following Chuck's lead now, where Chuck Jones with his Bugs and Daffy cartoons, the hunting ones that are so famous. Now I think when people think of classic cartoons, the classic Looney Tunes, they think of, those hunting cartoons with Bugs, Daffy, and Elmer. That's 3 cartoons. It's not many of these.
It's 3 cartoons. To be fair, it is 3 perfect masterpieces.
Yes. Truly incredible, but also I think it's noteworthy that they're just different from the rest. They're on another level in a way from most of these classic cartoons, and it was rare for them to be put together in this way. But once you have those 3 cartoons being so phenomenally funny, then it means now the studio kind of has to do Daffy in this way and has to present Bugs and Daffy in this way.
And Chuck did Alibaba Bunny the same year, 57.
Yeah.
And that's another one.
Oh boy, I'm rich, I'm wealthy, I'm independent, I'm socially secure, I'm rich.
Not a cartoon I love, because I think Daffy's a little too malicious in it, frankly.
Oh, really? I hear where you're coming from.
I like it. I think it's funny. Right. It's not like I'm like, Alibaba Bunny, no thanks.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But I knew you'd enjoy if I did that voice.
I kind of did, yeah. Yeah, I did.
But
thank you.
I do think this one, even though, as you say, he is now intending to murder Bugs, it doesn't feel over. Whereas Alibaba Bunny, he's like trying to strand him in the desert and take all of the riches for himself. I don't know.
Right. He's definitely pure greed in that. Whereas here, there's something about when it's his ego that feels a little bit different. I mean, those hunting trilogies start off with him intending for Bugs to be killed.
To get murdered, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And yet, for like here, this is the one where you probably sympathize with Daffy the most. For as much as Chuck Jones stresses that he has to be able to empathize with all of his characters in order to make them good, and so he empathizes with Daffy. I say it in the present tense for whatever reason. You know what I mean?
I don't think Chuck empathizes with Dan Backslide, but whatever, man.
Well, yeah, I know. Again, we come back to how Chuck eventually chose to frame. That's probably why I use present tense, because I want to distinguish, like, in the documents that we have now, this is sort of the Chuck framework. But like, here's Friz really making one of the most empathetic Daffys of this era, where we're getting this greedier Daffy. So I want to ask you, do you have much of a preference for whether we get the earlier, like Bob Clampett informed Daffy Duck or the later Chuck Jones informed Daffy Duck?
So I actually love every Daffy. And
I had a feeling you'd say this.
Have you read Jamie Weinman's book? The book is called Anvils, Mallets, and Dynamite, the unauthorized biography of Looney Tunes.
I have been told I need to get it. I want to get it. I do not have it yet. I have not read it.
It's great. I would recommend it highly. I probably have told you that before. Jamie, who is one of my favorite writers about pop culture, he theorizes, and I had never thought about it, that there are in fact 3 Daffys. The early wacky, woohoo, Bob Clampett hopping around Daffy, as you said. The 50s bitter, greedy Daffy, as we see here and in the Hunting trilogy. But then he postulates that the would-be hero of the Chuck Jones genre parodies is a 3rd distinct Daffy, and I think that's right. Your Duck Dodgers, your Drip-Along Daffy, your Deduce, you say. Because he's right. It's really neither of those guys, right? Robin Hood Daffy, he's neither being crazy nor being bitter and greedy about someone else doing better than him or whatever. He's trying to be the hero and failing.
They're definitely driven by ego, though. I think that's the difference. Is that early, like, you're right. That's a very good point. I thank you for bringing this.
And he obviously, he maps it out more in the chapter.
Yeah. Wow, I do need to read this. Wow, that's a great point.
It's a great book.
I think the trouble is that you could then also say that Friz's Daffy is a little bit different. Mostly up until this, like before this, Friz's Daffy is different because Friz, I think, finds that balance. And we talked about this in the last episode, which you haven't gotten to hear yet, Anthony, because at the time of this recording, I have not finished editing it. But Friz, from the beginning, has an approach to Daffy that's like, I'll do some of his bouncing around woohoo stuff and, you know, have him sing a highly energized number. However, also, he's going to have some, like, actual human traits driving him, and he's going to be kind of obnoxious and a little full of himself and wants to be a star. And so this cartoon, in a way, is sort of a sequel to You Ought to Be in Pictures, in that here's him, like, thinking of himself as a performer in show business, trying to be the star and having to get someone else out of the way.
Right. But so to answer your question.
Oh, yes.
If I'm being completely honest, the third Daffy, the like genre hero Duck Dodgers, deduce you say Daffy, is probably actually my favorite one. Because
that's a really good take, Anthony.
Because I love that stuff. I mean, you know, there's just something about, and I mean, you and I have talked about The Day the Earth Blew Up, which is the Bob Clampett, you know, TikTok tuckered Porky Daffy dynamic, and which is great, and I enjoyed it. But the Porky Daffy dynamic in those Chuck Jones cartoons from the 50s is just such a perfect role for both of those guys. Daffy to be like, I'm good at everything and failing, and Porky to just be like, nah, it's this, and like shrugging. You know?
Yeah.
I love those cartoons so much.
Yeah, they are absolutely among the best. I just adore them to death. When I last interrupted myself, I was talking about the xylophone gag, which, or as it's sometimes known anyway, it's those endearing young charms gag. Warren Foster first used some version of this in the Private Snafu cartoon Booby Traps, which was directed by Bob Clampett. And Foster used the version that we're a bit more familiar with, I think, though still with a piano instead of a xylophone, in Ballot Box Bunny. So for our writer, he's relying on reliable material here. The gag would appear in a different form in an Animaniacs episode with Slappy Squirrel, where she's up against a dog. The dog hits one note on the xylophone and it explodes. Like, they don't do the whole xylophone gag. It's very referential about the xylophone gag, and she turns to the camera and is like, old gag, new twist. And it's like, it's not a twist. That doesn't make any sense. There's no logic to it. Like, that moment kind of encapsulates where my frustration with Animaniacs comes in, where it's I get it. You were trying so hard to raise your eyebrow at perfection, and you end up with something that is so much less grounded. I don't need these gags to be logical per se, but it's nice when they make a kind of sense.
No, I
get it. When they build a joke.
Can I tell you why I love Slappy though?
Oh, I love Slappy, but please go on.
Those cartoons dare to imagine a world where
I know
where a woman can be Bugs Bunny.
I know.
You know? And
that's why I do feel bad kind of picking on this moment, because it's like, well, I love her in it. Like, I wish this was
great.
real.
Sherry Stoner is great. I think a wonderful vocal performance. But I just think, like, you watch the actual, like, you've been talking about these cartoons in Looney Tunes, there are almost no female characters.
Yeah.
You know? And if there are, it's Bugs and Drag, or it's like,
which does not count, but go on.
So
we'll talk about that.
So she's mechanical, you know. At the end of Hair Raising Hair or whatever, you know. But very few. I mean, it's like they might have like a henpecked mom or a henpecked wife. Yeah. Sometimes
there's Granny,
Mama Bear.
Right. There's Granny. There's Witch Hazel.
Sure, yeah.
Mostly, and there, like with Witch Hazel, we're talking about so late in the game.
Yeah,
in a way.
That's around this time. That's 56 Broomstick Bunny.
Yeah, I love that Slappy shows that it can work. That particular gag is not a good example of it, and I'm very, very fond of this gag, to the point that since I've been in high school, I have had the xylophone gag as like a go-to ringtone on my phone from Show Biz Bugs specifically.
Love that about
you. When my phone is ringing, if it has the sound on, which is rare, you're probably going to hear da 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 da, like that wrong version. And then if it's a text message, then you're getting the version that blows up.
Great. You still have this on your phone?
Yeah, I never really got rid of it. I don't think that's my text tone right now, but the full ringtone being that, do I use it for alarms sometimes? Yeah, still in my phone for all these years later. I love Show Biz Bugs. I love the xylophone gag. It's good.
You love to see it.
Bugs is performing an impressive juggling act now to great applause, and Daffy spontaneously runs out to say another one of his catchphrases, I hate you.
Also seen in the Hunting Trilogy.
He says, now you've forced me to use the act I've held back for a special occasion. Just try and top this one. Daffy walks on stage in a devil costume for some reason, carrying a briefcase. It's ill-fitting, and yet it fits beautifully.
Yeah, it looks great.
I still don't really get what it's about, except I guess foreshadowing what he thinks lies ahead for him. I don't know.
Well, he knows what the act is.
Yeah, he knows. I now present an act but it's okay. Sorry, before even saying this, it's like he has embraced his role as the antagonist. Like he has finally reached the conclusion that he has to be the loser, to the point that he presents himself as the loser in like supernatural terms. He is the ultimate one who has to lose now, and he just embraces that as he comes out, again, fully committed to his performance. I now present an act that no other performer has ever dared to execute. He then provides a content warning advising those with weak constitutions to leave the theater for his performance. Well, golly, if anyone with a weak constitution has to leave, I guess America has to leave thanks to Donald Trump.
You said it. JD has actually left the room. He's never coming back. The podcast is over. I regret to inform you that the podcast has ended, and JD is never coming back.
Daffy doesn't give them much time to exit the theater. He immediately calls for lights and music, thanks the maestro, and begins his act. Taking items out of the briefcase one at a time, he picks up a container of gasoline and says, "First, I drink a generous portion of gasoline."
Gasoline?
He drinks so much freaking gasoline.
So just sloshing it on in there.
Then he does the same with nitroglycerine. A goodly amount of gunpowder, he says, and uranium-238. And like each time he takes one, the violin plays a higher note, building the suspense. He adds, "Shake well," then bounces up and down. He pulls out a matchbox and says, "Strike an ordinary match." Just before he swallows the lit match, he adds, "Girls, you'd better hold on to your boyfriends."
His Mel Blanc's delivery of "you better hold on to your boyfriends" is so funny.
Yeah.
It's sexist, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, like it's 1957, but also it's Mel Blanc as Daffy Duck, and it's okay. Mm-hmm. So Daffy completes his performance, saying, "Swallow the match, like so," and as it goes down the hatch, and he strikes a big pose for us, he goes kablooey. And it's, once again, a moment of perfect timing, where you get that expression on his face just before the explosion that sells the whole thing.
Yeah.
The audience wildly cheers like never before, and the music triumphantly plays Four Leaf Clover again. Bugs is off to the side saying, "That's terrific, Daffy! They loved it! They want more!" Daffy, now a translucent ghost floating up to heaven, responds, I know, but I can only do it once." That's all, folks.
Can we talk about how often Looney Tunes characters go to heaven and
die at the end?
At the end.
Yeah.
Because it happens.
Yeah, it happens.
Well, like, I mentioned, I think 7 cartoons up top, Friz Freleng cartoons. And 2 of them end with that, which is 3 little bops. You got to get hot to play real cool.
Right.
And Back Alley Uproar ends with the 9 angels. Sylvester has 9 angels after he dies.
Yeah. But it's also a thing in Daffy cartoons, because Daffy
certainly goes to hell to try to escape the little man from the draft board.
Right. He goes to hell in Drafty Daffy, goes up to heaven in Daffy Duck and the Dinosaur.
Oh, he sure does. Yeah, he sure does.
Or like early Daffy.
Yeah, great cartoon. That's another public domain classic. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of Chuck's first outings with Daffy, if not Chuck's first, like pretty early on, he's like, "Here's my idea, Daffy dies." I feel like there's another Daffy where he dies that I'm forgetting. It's like a common thing for Daffy, and I think it's worth noting that I don't associate it with Bugs at all. Like, I can't think of a time when Bugs has been allowed to get this same kind of ending that is fair game for other characters. It may have happened once or twice.
Right,
but I can't think of it. And that says something, right, about their understanding of Bugs as too precious and beloved to the audience at this point. Like, once a character is beloved enough, how much can you put them through? Whereas Daffy, as I think this showcases, you can put Daffy through anything, and it'll still be funny. You'll still love the guy. You can have him say or do anything to other people, as hateful or evil as you want it to be, and he's still lovable, still funny. You still kind of feel for the guy.
Absolutely.
And you feel fine when he dies at the end. Like, this is... What we just saw was the ending of Pippin, except he does it. Except he actually goes through with killing himself as a performance for other people.
That's true.
That's what we just saw with Daffy. And yet, instead of being chilled, we're like, hooray.
Well, Daffy's got magic to do.
Yes, he absolutely does. The one I was trying to think of, the Scarlet Pumpernickel.
Oh, yeah, of course. You got to kill yourself to sell a story. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I guess, hey, this is where any content warning I may have had, hopefully we'll have had about this, comes into play, where these cartoons, they do a number of jokes involving suicide, and in a way, this is one of them, and yet this, to me, feels much better than when he puts a gun to his head at the end of Scarlet Pumpernickel. This seems fine to me.
Do you know that when they ran that on TV in the 90s, it just didn't have that joke at the end? This is what I was going to get to. It's this. When I was a kid, it just ended with the price of foodstuffs skyrocketing, and that was the end. Like,
wait, where is that in the cartoon?
It's one of the things he's saying. Like, and then the cavalry rode in, and then the price of foodstuffs skyrocketed.
Oh.
When he's telling the end of the story.
Yeah.
And then he pulls out the gun, but on TNT he didn't.
I was going to say, in this cartoon, they edited it a bunch of different ways so that they could get around the ending, because it wasn't just the fact that he dies at the end and he dies by his own hand. It's the fact that he's like drinking gasoline and stuff. Right. And they didn't want kids to do that.
I don't have specific memories. I think, well, we'll get into that, but when I was a kid, I couldn't tell the difference between this cartoon and the opening credits of the Bugs Bunny and Tweety show.
So that brings us to, very precisely actually, the legacy of this cartoon. Because this one was evidently pretty well liked. It's one that, like, part of why I think it comes up in documentaries a bunch is Friz Freleng would talk about it as one of his favorites from his own work. And pretty quickly, they latched onto this as a format that they could use. Just a few years later, for a show they made in 1960 called The Bugs Bunny Show, which ran from 1960 to 1962.
In prime time. We should note, like, that was on network television.
Yeah. Originally an ABC network series that eventually was moved to Saturday morning.
And that's where I knew it.
So yeah, 52 episodes, seemingly running even into 1963, but then it just got reran forever. Like, this show introduced a lot of people to Bugs Bunny and to the classic Looney Tunes characters, including noted animation historian Jerry Beck, who's come up on this podcast a lot. He knows these cartoons from the Bugs Bunny show, and a lot of people did. Yeah. Basically, so this was a TV show that was a staple of children's television to the end of the 20th century. That was just like a compilation show that played a bunch of Looney Tunes shorts, and there were some original animated pieces stitching them together.
Right. On the Bugs Bunny show there were. Later, like... That's what I mean. When I was a kid, on the Bugs Bunny and Tweety show, as it was called, in the 90s, there wasn't any of that, Except for the opening theme song was still there.
Right. One. And that's probably what most people would know from the show. I think they would know the opening theme.
Overture, curtain lights, this is it. We'll hit the heights, and oh, what heights we'll hit. On with the show, this is it.
Such a good song.
Great song, and it was so strange because all of the characters were together.
Yeah.
And it has like Foghorn Leghorn and Elmer Fudd, like they're buddies. Or whatever.
You could argue in a way that the Disneyfication of the Looney Tunes begins there.
Yeah.
As, like, you have Bugs and Daffy do their little number, they sing This Is It, and then for an instrumental interlude, they have, like, this parade of the classic cartoon characters, where in a march, you've got, like, Tweety, followed by Speedy Gonzales, and then, like, Pepe Le Pew is in the group. I think, is the third one Hippity Hopper?
He's in there. Yeah, I don't know if he's in there. Yeah.
Like, right away, they're like, and here's one of your favorites on the same level as Tweety, Hippity Hopper.
Well, like, you got to get those McKimson fans.
You got to get the McKimsons in there. Yeah.
I actually like most of those Hippity Hopper cartoons. Really? Okay. I don't love them. They're not my favorite.
I've seen almost none of it, but I've always been curious. I got to watch some Hippity Hoppers at some
everybody's eyelids are halfway closed. So watch out for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Other than that, it's fine. But we should note that dance sequence for the Bugs Bunny show, at least the original version, was animated by Jerry Chinicki.
There you go.
Yeah.
That whole idea for the original version of the show, probably not much of what you saw apart from the opening theme, but the original version of the show is like, here's Bugs and Daffy putting on a show, and Daffy wants to be the star of the show, but Bugs is the star. They just use this framing device and like the very similar dancing, like in a very similar theater, different outfits. But it's this idea that defined what Looney Tunes was for a generation, and arguably for generations, and it just kept mutating in different forms when it became like the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner show and all sorts of different things. Yeah. So when you think about it, this show and this cartoon that we've been talking about, Show Biz Bugs, played a very big part in keeping these cartoons in the public consciousness. After movie theater attendance dropped, the new cartoons got worse. They stopped making the cartoons, and after like most of the American animation industry moved to television, this preserved it. And it should also be said that the Bugs Bunny show pretty much laid the groundwork for the Muppet Show.
Yeah, it feels similar.
Like we've said that the Muppet Show is a vaudeville show, and that's true, but also that's a similar thing where someone had to figure out how to take a form of comedy they had done that's about short pieces with characters that don't necessarily belong together and just present a bunch of short pieces to people. And Jim kind of figures out how to do just a different version of the Bugs Bunny show thing, at least for season 1, to just present you Mana, like one of the things that he already had, the same way that the Bugs Bunny show is presenting cartoons they had already made.
We should note that Jim here refers to Jim Henson.
I should have
said that, creator of the Muppets, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I forget I'm not on a Muppet podcast.
That's okay.
Here's the thing, though. Even though I didn't watch the Bugs Bunny show itself, that is still responsible for my introduction to Looney Tunes. I haven't talked very much about how I got to know these cartoons. Like in my whole very, very long introductory episode, I didn't really do much where I'm like, well, my story with Looney Tunes is this. And at this point, we've gone on so long, I don't have time to really get into the details here. It is kind of pertinent to this specific cartoon. So, Anthony, I have just sent you a link.
All right, there it is. There it is. It's Looney Tunes Sing Along.
Yep, this is from 1998. It is very much like the Disney sing-along tapes that we would use the Disney parks walk around, like costume versions of the characters, which is what got me into Disney parks. Very much like the Muppet sing-along tapes. The Bee and Green sing-along that the Muppets did is what got me into the Muppets. So there's definitely a pattern here.
We recently covered the Muppet Treasure Island sing-along tape on my podcast, Moving Right Along.
Yeah, it's a format that tends to work well for Muppets, does not really work for Looney Tunes.
Sure. Well, I'm watching it, so it's the theme song is on here at 7 minutes or whatever you said.
So it uses a bit of Show Biz Bugs as the framing device, and then you hear newly recorded audio of Daffy or Bugs, I think, saying, "Uh-oh, we're in the wrong costumes. Time for a quick change." They use that then to transition to the opening of the Bugs Bunny show, where they're in totally different costumes than they are in Show Biz Bugs, but they try to act like it's all continuous, like it's one show.
The theater's close enough, you know.
Yeah.
Like that it works.
You can almost allow it.
I am going to watch this whole thing as soon as we finish this recording, just so you know.
Great, good. It's bad. So I would like you, because I'm about to play this clip for the audience, and so I would like you to get to hear right now how bad it is when they try to force Looney Tunes, which is not meant for sing-alongs, to be a sing-along with children like singing the words. So you can play from around 8:45 whenever you like.
8:45. Okay,
I'll just watch your reaction here.
Okay. So it's the clip from Show Biz Bugs.
I'm sick of people taking bows for my talent. Now do your own dance. I challenge you. Dance if you're not a coward.
Bugs is gonna dance. They got to shave and a haircut, and there's the sing along.
There's no time for you to process that you're about to have words on screen. You can't know that they're coming until the song is over, Anthony.
No, right? No, you're right.
Play a few seconds more.
Okay.
Kill him. Music, maestro, please.
E
flat from the top.
Where'd you get those peepers? And it's Daffy's tap dance. Peepers. Where'd you get those peepers? Amazing.
And the kids are like so off key. They sound terrible as they're rushing through this song. The whole point is that it should be impossible to perform this.
Too fast, yeah.
And they're presenting it as though children could do it.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like, I never actually sang along with any of this, but like this was a tape that I think my uncle had it. And so I got to see like little clips from Rabbit of Seville and Duck Amuck and stuff and kind of get to know Bugs and Daffy as characters from this, which then got me hungry to see the real cartoons.
You see, so it still worked. Like that's what's remarkable.
Worked, and I think it worked because Show Biz Bugs is so freaking good that even when it is just treated terribly, it makes you want to see more. And I think that means that this is part of how I have some natural fondness for the legacy of vaudeville. Like, the legacy of vaudeville lives on in our cultural memory because of these cartoons. It's something that scholar Donald Crafton spends a long time on when he talks about cartoon performance. And in future episodes of this show, I'm going to spend some more time working through that text. So you can look forward to that this season as well. Any final thoughts for us, Anthony, on Show Biz Bugs or anything related?
The only thing that I had in my notes that I didn't get to say about the connection between vaudeville and Looney Tunes, is that Joe Adamson, the film historian Joe Adamson, he has written 4 books. One is the Walter Lantz story, the Woody Woodpecker guy, right?
Good. Yep.
The other 3 are Tex Avery, King of Cartoons, Bugs Bunny, 50 Years and Only One Gray Hair, and Groucho, Harpo, Chico, and sometimes Zeppo. A history of the Marx Brothers and a satire of the rest of the world.
Okay, great.
Which is a perfect book. The greatest book I've ever read about comedy.
Oh, wow.
It's one of the very few books about comedy that is also very fun. You know? Like, and it succeeds in that goal of being very fun. I love it. Great book.
Fascinating.
The great Marx Brothers book.
Wow.
But I think the fact that he has such a relatively few books that he's written, and it's like, one is about the Marx Brothers, a vaudeville act, literally a vaudeville act.
Yeah.
And the others are all about animated shorts. You know, like, says a lot about the connection between those two things. So I meant to say that earlier and didn't find a place for it. So.
I think it works just fine right here. Thank you, Anthony. And now, a brief epilogue. Back in the heyday of vaudeville, some newspaper cartoonists started performing curious acts called chalk talks, in which they rapidly drew cartoons to illustrate points in a kind of lecture. That sounds simple enough, but they started getting complicated. Vaudeville audiences were treated to drawings that seemed to somehow move on their own. At first, this seemed like some sort of magic trick. Not in the sense of being wondrous, but in the sense of, well, trickery. Audiences thought this might be accomplished with some sort of puppetry, for example. Then one cartoonist, the superstar of the newspaper comic strip, Winsor McCay, presented an act that could not be a trick. It could only be accomplished with dedication to the art of drawing, and perhaps to a new art form that was emerging. Winsor introduced audiences to a huge, enormous dinosaur. Its name was Gertie, and together, Winsor and Gertie set the course of animated cartoons.
I will speak to Gertie, and she will do everything that I ask her to. Come on, Gertie. Come on out and take a pretty bow. That's a good girl.
Now, that clip you just heard wasn't from the original vaudeville act. We don't have any footage of that, sadly. This was from a shortened recreation of the act for the Disneyland episode, The Story of the Animated Drawing. It's about 15 minutes into the episode, or if you're watching the version with the Leonard Maltin intro from the Walt Disney Treasures DVD, Behind the Scenes at the Walt Disney Studio, it's about 18 minutes in. This is probably just about the best way to get a sense for what audiences originally saw on the vaudeville stage. You can find it on Disney+, and that whole episode is a terrific companion to this season of the podcast, fleshing out a number of key details that I'm skimming through on the show. That having been said, our Gertie the Dinosaur podcast episode is mostly about the short film that was made for movie theaters, which incorporates the animation from the stage act. You can easily find this on YouTube. Just look for a video that's about 13 to 14 minutes long. We'll talk about this strange and charming little film when we return. Folks, it's about time for us to say so long, but before we do, we'd like to let you know where you can find us. Anthony, where can the people go to find you, your work, or anything you'd like to plug?
You can always find me yakking on Blue Sky at Durwood Clapper. That's my Blue Sky handle.
Hooray.
Talking nonsense over there, trying to get you to watch In the Bag recently.
You tried. I didn't watch it today. I watched... I watched Rhapsody and Rivets because I thought that was more pertinent to the cartoon we're covering. Another Friz. Amazingly, we didn't talk about it. Anthony, today was my first time watching that cartoon, and it was great.
It's great, isn't it?
It's really delightful.
Yeah, it rules. See, because last time I was on, I said something about Friz and music and timing.
Yeah, you've talked about Rhapsody and Rivets or mentioned it on this podcast before.
Certainly one that is like huge for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you saw
Everyone watch it. It's so good.
You can follow me there. You can hear my thoughts on Muppet movies on Moving Right Along, a Muppet movie podcast brought to you by toughpigs.com.
All of them great movies, equally great, that you can tell on the podcast Anthony loves the same amount.
I love all movies. I'm just a fan of cinema, JD.
I'm wiggling my eyebrows here, raising eyebrows.
JD has been on the program. If you aren't familiar with our show, JD's been on it a couple times, and he's always a delightful guest. We love having him on.
Oh, thank you.
He's going to come on to talk about this also great movie, Muppets from Space.
It is good. I think I like it. We'll see what my opinion is when I actually get on the podcast. You'll find me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at JD11PC. You can find this show on Facebook or Blue Sky by searching for Stick to Shorts. That's where we post about what shorts we'll be covering next so you can watch along with us. Those posts also include info on where you can find the cartoons on home media, as well as content warnings so you know what you're getting yourself into before you watch the cartoon. Please be sure to give us a rating and review in your podcast app of choice and tell all your cartoon fan friends to listen so more people can find us. I would like to take a moment to thank you, dear listeners, for sticking with the show after a hiatus that was much longer than I'd planned. Many of you have been so incredibly supportive and have taken it upon yourselves to post kind words about the podcast around social media. It really means a lot to me. I would also like to thank my friends who have given me advice and feedback that has improved the show. I should also mention that I'm trying out Ko-fi, however you pronounce it, as a way to raise some money to help cover the costs of this podcast. If you happen to be in a position to give a couple bucks to the cause, I would appreciate it greatly. You can find the link at sticktoshorts.com. It looks like the release schedule for this season is going to have to be every other week, so join us again in 2 weeks for the groundbreaking 1914 film Gertie the Dinosaur. Until then, please remember, the next time you try to outshine Bugs Bunny, stick to shorts.